The birth of Christ is certainly a major milestone in the history of Christianity. It is not only his birthday, we can also see it as the starting point of Christianity itself. Have you ever wondered why we celebrate this day worldwide on December 25th? Why did Christians choose this date? Where did it all begin, and is it accurate? And if it is not absolutely accurate, then why do millions of people still cherish that day as something sacred, like a lamp that never goes out through the long winters of human life? To truly understand when Jesus was born, we need to study history, astronomy, scripture, and culture, linking together the clues that remain. It seems that over the centuries, everyone has had their own understanding and viewpoint on this issue. But Christians have agreed and strongly insisted that December 25th is the birthday of Christ. And right here, a deeper question begins to knock. What makes a day in faith? Is it historical data, or the meaning a community of faith pours into it? We will present the facts we know about Jesus' birth and try to continue from there. But before we go any further, ask yourself something very real. If you could only hear the Christmas story one more time, would you want to hear it as a calculation, as an argument, or as an invitation to return to hope? Is Christmas Jesus' birthday? If you ask most people, when is Jesus' birthday? The answer will probably be December 25th. After all, that is when the whole world celebrates Christmas. We decorate the tree, admire the sparkling lights, sing carols on frost-covered streets, and reenact the Nativity. In many people's memories, especially those who have lived more than half their lives, Christmas is not just a day, it is a feeling. The feeling of being comforted, of being reminded that light can still come, even when the night is the longest. However, the Bible does not clearly state this date, or any date, for the birth of Christ. And that very lack of clarity sometimes confuses us. Wanting a definite moment for a beginning is completely normal. Certainty helps us feel more at ease. But in this case, there is no definitive evidence of when Jesus was actually born. So why has December 25th been honored as his birthday? Is it because people always need something to lean on? Or because in God's plan, what matters is not on the calendar, but in the heart that knows how to recognize and receive? Come with me to uncover the truth through the historical, biblical, and cultural aspects that have been preserved to this day. Not to shake faith, but to make our faith more mature, deeper, and more enduring. Part 1. The Bible's silence and climate evidence. The Bible does not record a specific date for Jesus' birth. However, details in the Gospels suggest that this event did not take place in winter. The first sign, the activity of the shepherds. According to the Gospel of Luke, on the night Jesus was born, shepherds were out in the fields, keeping watch over their flocks by night. In 1st century Judea, livestock were typically grazed outdoors from spring through early fall. By late December, cold weather usually required flocks to be brought into shelter, so it would be very unlikely for them to be out in the fields at that time. Are you surprised? Because this is precisely a sign of a close connection to the agricultural season. And from here, we begin to realize something. The Christmas story does not float above everyday life. It touches the breathing rhythm of the earth and sky, of pastures, of labor, of the most ordinary shepherds. Please watch the whole video, okay? This is only the beginning of the exploration. I'm sure you'll be surprised by new knowledge about that truth. Let's keep going, because sometimes what surprises us is not new information, but the way it makes us look back at the familiar with different eyes. Likely season of birth. Many scholars lean toward the hypothesis that Jesus was born in spring or fall. Spring fits the image of the Lamb of God, while fall is connected to the Jewish Feast of Tabernacles, carrying the meaning that God dwells with humanity. And the question is, if Jesus came in spring or fall, what does that change in your life of faith today? Or does the real change lie in whether we are willing to let Him be with us through the winters inside our hearts? Why choose December 25th? Choosing this date was more strategic and theological than historically precise. In the early days, the Church may have Christianized Roman festivals held around the winter solstice. A prime example is Saturnalia, celebrated in December to honor Saturn, the god of agriculture. Similarly, Sol Invictus, the festival of the unconquered sun, celebrated the rebirth of the sun on December 25th. This is when the early church began to play its role. To strengthen Christianity's position in society, they may have made use of these celebrations. Why not make December 25th a day to honor Jesus, the light of the world? It was a strategic move, tying the birth of Christ to the sacred rhythm of light overcoming darkness. Brilliant symbolism? Yes. Historically exact? Maybe not entirely, but there is a question that makes people reflect. Could God use humanity's longing to find light to lead them to the true light? Here, if you don't understand what the winter solstice is, I'll explain more so you can understand. In Feng Shui, people divide a year into 24 solar terms. Each month corresponds to 2 solar terms. If you want to know which solar term means what, you can comment under the post, and I'll answer for you. Back to the winter solstice. It begins on December 21st, solar calendar, and ends on January 4th, the following year, understood as late December and early January of the following year. And interestingly, the winter solstice is the time when the night is the longest. But it is also when the light begins to return. You see? That image alone is enough to make people want to place a sacred marker at the very moment that seems darkest. Part 2. The calculation hypothesis, one of the main theories explaining the origin of December 25th as a religious holiday, focuses on theological connections rather than actual historical events. Let's analyze this hypothesis in detail. Because sometimes, what gives tradition its vitality is not right or wrong, in a laboratory sense, but its ability to help a community of faith see God's order in a world that seems chaotic. The calculation hypothesis focuses on the significance of March 25th. In early Christian thought, this date was extremely symbolic because it marked 2 major events. The Annunciation, the moment the angel Gabriel told Mary that she would conceive Jesus. The crucifixion, the day Jesus died on the cross. And right here, people recognized a very faith-shaped logic. Life is not scattered fragments, but a story woven with meaning. Scholars and early believers held a symbolic idea that Jesus' life had to begin and end on the same day. Linking the day of conception, the beginning of life, and the day of death, the end of earthly life, to the same date, March 25th, expressed faith in a perfect and orderly divine plan. Have you ever wished your own life could be that orderly? And if God has His order, could that order be present even in the parts of your life you think are messy? Let's do the calculation that leads to December 25th. From the starting point set as March 25th, Christians performed a simple biological calculation. Conception, March 25th. Standard pregnancy length, 9 months. Result, March 25th plus 9 months equals December 25th. Do you see how miraculous it is? Every calculation is based on reality, with no assumption that is not calculated. And then December 25th became an appointment for the whole community to look up, to remember, to give thanks. In addition, this hypothesis may be more theological than practical. Its main purpose was not to find a historically precise date based on birth records, but to strengthen faith, connect Jesus' life to God's sacred purpose, create unity, give the Church a logical basis, even if theological logic, to agree on a date for celebrating Christmas in the absence of clear historical evidence. And for those who have lived through many Christmas seasons, that unity is not just a convention, it is a shared breath, a reminder that we are not alone in faith. And what is the difference from other hypotheses? Unlike the theory that the Church chose December 25th to Christianize pagan festivals such as Saturnalia or Sol Invictus, the festival of the unconquered sun, the calculation hypothesis argues that the date was proposed based on internal Christian calculations related to Jesus' life. In short, the calculation hypothesis reflects the early Christians' effort to use numerical symbolism and symmetry to honor the incarnation of Jesus, turning December 25th into a milestone in the salvation timeline rather than an ordinary birthday. And here again is a question worth pondering. If Christmas is a milestone of salvation, where are you standing on that journey? Part 3. Historical clues about Jesus' birth. If December 25th is not historically accurate, can we try to determine the year Jesus was born? After all, based on that event, history is divided into before Christ and after Christ, right? We can use scattered historical references in Scripture, ancient texts, and astronomical phenomena. These clues do not lead us along a straight line. They lead us into a tangled mess of timelines and interpretations. But if we track them carefully, they can bring us closer to an answer. And this is like the life of faith, too. It is not always straight. But if we are patient, we will see the path. 1. The reign of Herod the Great. This is one of the most important pieces of evidence for setting an upper boundary on Jesus' birth year. The first key clue comes from the Gospel of Matthew, which says Jesus was born during the reign of Herod the Great. Herod's life was recorded in great detail by historians such as Flavius Josephus, who wrote that the king died shortly after a lunar eclipse around 4 BC. This creates an upper boundary. Jesus must have been born before Herod died. But how much earlier? The infamous massacre of the innocent children, in which Herod ordered the killing of boys under 2 years old, may be a clue. If this event occurred shortly before Herod's death, it suggests Jesus may have been born as early as about 6 BC. So we are looking at the period from 6 to 4 BC. Not absolutely precise, but it is a good start, and sometimes, in life too, we don't need absolute certainty, but enough light to keep walking. 2. The census under Quirinius. The census under Quirinius is one of the most important historical details, and also one of the most controversial in the biblical accounts of Jesus' birth. According to the Gospel of Luke, this census was carried out by decree of Emperor Caesar Augustus, who reigned from 27 BC to AD 14. Purpose: require everyone in the Roman Empire to return to their hometown to register. Result: this order forced Mary and Joseph to travel from Nazareth to Bethlehem, the city of King David. This carries deep theological meaning because it fulfills the prophecy in Micah that the Messiah would be born in Bethlehem. However, there is also a major chronological contradiction between historical records and Luke's narrative. Herod's time frame. Matthew affirms Jesus was born under Herod the Great, who is identified as having died around 4 BC. Quirinius's time frame. Roman historical records note that Quirinius conducted a well-known census in AD 6. A 10-year gap. Thus, Quirinius's census took place about 10 years after Herod's death. This mismatch has puzzled scholars for centuries. And think about it. If even chroniclers can differ by a decade, are we demanding too much precision from a story told for salvation? Not for writing a timeline? To address this inconsistency, many hypotheses have been proposed. First, a lexical interpretation. The Greek word translated as governor in Luke could have a broader meaning, such as administrator or official. It is possible Quirinius held an administrative role in Syria, Judea, earlier than when he officially became governor. Second, an unrecorded census. One hypothesis suggests Luke was referring to an earlier census that contemporary historians did not fully record. Third, a theological intention. Some argue the detail about the census may have been incorporated or adjusted to connect Jesus' birth with real Roman administrative practices of the time, to affirm that Jesus truly entered the stream of human history. Although Quirinius' census remains a missing piece in efforts to pinpoint an exact date, it offers a view of the world into which Jesus was born. Political context. A world under strict Roman rule, where the emperor's power could shape the life of every small individual. The beginning of an era. Even with uncertainty about the year, this event marks the start of a story that rises above all historical timelines. In summary, the census is seen as a tool that brought Jesus' family to the right place, according to the divine plan, even though the historical details still contain mysteries not fully resolved. In any case, the census under Quirinius remains a fascinating but incomplete piece of the timeline. And perhaps this very incompleteness reminds us to live humbly. We do not grasp everything, but we can still believe. 3. The Star of Bethlehem, an astronomical clock. The Star of Bethlehem is not only a religious symbol, it is also seen by scientists and theologians as an important astronomical clock for determining when Jesus was born. And here we stand again between two things. Science wants to measure, faith wants to understand. Below is a detailed analysis of this phenomenon. First, the planetary conjunction hypothesis. This is the most popular explanation and has the strongest scientific basis for explaining the star that guided the way. The conjunction of Jupiter and Saturn, 7 BC. Astronomers point to a rare event in which Jupiter and Saturn drew close together, creating a bright glow that looked like a single star in the sky. This event is specifically noted as occurring in September of 7 BC. The conjunction in 2 BC. Another hypothesis mentions a rare planetary conjunction in June of 2 BC. Meaning, because Jupiter often symbolized king and Saturn symbolized the Jews in ancient astrology, this conjunction may have prompted the Magi to set out in search of a new king. Second, the nova or supernova hypothesis. Another possibility is the explosion of a dying star, producing a sudden, extremely bright light in the sky. This could explain why the star appeared and then disappeared, or seemed to stand still in a specific position. However, note that there is very little concrete evidence of any supernova event occurring within exactly this time frame. Third, the comet hypothesis. A comet, with its long bright tail, has also been considered a candidate for the Star of Bethlehem. Halley's Comet, recorded as appearing in 12 BC. Although brilliant, the 12 BC date is considered too early compared to other historical clues such as Herod's reign or the census, which often point to the period 7 to 4 BC. The star as a guiding needle for the historical timeline. Analyzing the Star of Bethlehem as a time-measuring tool helps historians narrow the search. The window 7 to 5 BC, if the star was truly an astronomical phenomenon, especially the 7 BC conjunction, it strengthens the hypothesis that Jesus was born between 7 and 5 BC. Fit with Herod. This time frame aligns well with the historical record of Herod the Great, who died in 4 BC, who received the Magi and ordered the search for the child. Whether an astronomical event or a miracle, the Star of Bethlehem carries a message about the connection between heaven and earth. It serves as a sign that Jesus entered humanity at a specific moment in history, tied to the rhythm of the universe. The mystery of the star's exact nature encourages believers to focus on the meaning of the Lord's coming, rather than only on technical numbers. In summary, the Star of Bethlehem functions like a clock, indicating that Jesus' birth most likely occurred around 7 to 5 BC, matching fascinating astronomical events from that time. And here's something to think about. Could it be that your star today is not in the sky, but in a reminder, a Bible verse, or an event that makes you stop and look again at the direction you're going? Part 4. Does the year matter? So, when was Jesus born? The most accurate estimates suggest a range from 6 to 4 BC. Although this may feel vague for such an important figure, it shows the imperfect nature of historical records and the layers of symbolism within the Gospels. Why does Jesus' exact birth date matter so much to us? Part of the fascination lies in the human desire to connect with great events and anchor them in time and space. However, from a theological perspective, when Jesus was born matters less than why he was born. Christmas marks the fulfillment of prophecies, the incarnation of God as man, and the beginning of salvation history. By choosing December 25th, the early church created a unified time for believers to reflect on these truths, regardless of historical precision. And if you have ever gone through loss, loneliness, illness, or years when you felt like you had nothing left to hold on to, you will understand why people need a day like this. Not to argue, but to be reminded that hope once came and can still come. Determining the birth year, estimated around 6 to 4 BC, shows Jesus was born into a society ruled by kings like Herod the Great and administered under Roman power. A people's expectation. This was a time when hope for a Messiah burned strongly in the hearts of the Jews under oppression. A milestone for humanity. This birth year has special meaning because it is the basis for dividing world history into 2 eras: before Christ, BC, and Anno Domini, AD. From the perspective of faith, the question why matters more than the question when. Fulfillment of prophecy. The birth year marks the completion of prophecies, the incarnation of God as man, and the starting point of salvation history. An appointed time. Whether Jesus was born in 6 BC or 4 BC does not change the belief that he entered the world at the moment he needed to come in order to carry out the divine plan. The transcendence of the story. His birth marks the beginning of a story that goes beyond ordinary timelines. But beyond the year, can we determine the season or even the exact day Jesus Christ was born? The truth is no. But there are a few clues hidden in the birth narratives if you know where to look, so please share under the post so everyone can learn together. Maybe your sharing will be a giving of direction from God. And sometimes the things we share, even small ones, become a star for someone else. Part 5. What do we know about the Virgin Mary and Saint Joseph? The story of Jesus' birth also raises questions about his earthly parents. What was their role in shaping the childhood of the Messiah? And when we think about Mary and Joseph, we are also thinking about ordinary people whom God placed at the center of something extraordinary. What does that say about how God sees you and me? People who sometimes feel too small? How old was Mary when Jesus was born? According to sources, at the time Jesus was born, Mary was likely only a teenage girl, around 13 to 16 years old. This was the customary marriage age for Jewish women at that time. Her youth makes her faith and extraordinary courage stand out even more in accepting God's plan. Early Christians believed March 25th was the Feast of the Annunciation, when the angel Gabriel told Mary she would conceive Jesus. And try to pause for a moment. A young girl like that, in a society that harsh, said yes. If it were you, would you dare to believe and dare to step forward? When Jesus was born, how old was Joseph? Joseph's age is not as clearly defined as Mary's. Some traditions describe him as an older widower, while other views suggest he was close in age to Mary. Joseph is recorded as Jesus' earthly father, noted for his loyalty and his protective nature toward the family. However, Joseph played an important role in bringing the family to Bethlehem, the city of King David, for the census, thereby fulfilling the prophecies about the Messiah's birthplace. A man of few words, not much spotlight, but one who carried responsibility. And perhaps many of us, especially those who have lived many years, understand that it is those quiet roles that keep a family standing. In summary, Mary and Joseph appear not only as characters in a story, but as real people of strong faith, facing the harsh political and social challenges of the Roman Empire to protect and raise the Messiah. And that makes us wonder, in our own lives, has God ever entrusted us with a quiet responsibility, one that, only in hindsight, we understand had meaning? The lack of clear answers about Jesus' birth date can make us uncomfortable. But perhaps this mystery is intentional. By leaving specific details unclear, the Gospel writers invite us to focus not on when Jesus was born, but on the deeper meaning of his coming. So, when was Jesus really born? The answer is a complex picture woven from historical records, theological tradition, and astronomical clues. Although December 25th is almost certainly not the actual birth date, it carries deep symbolic meaning, giving Christians a moment to honor the light that has come into the world. In the end, it is all about reflecting on the extraordinary reality that God chose to step into human history, bringing hope, love, and redemption. And that truth rises above any specific day or year. Because what matters is not what day God came on the calendar, but whether God has come into your life, and whether you open the door for him. And what about you? After watching the video, how important do you think the birth of the Lord is? Please comment below. I want to create a community so we can explore faith together, and I hope faith in God will spread. And if you are in a season where your faith feels tired, I just want to ask one question. If light once overcame darkness in that story, could it do the same in your story today?